Hi, my name is Chris Clark, Artistic Director of the 29th Annual Whitaker St. Louis International Film Festival. Films come to us in a variety of ways, from open submissions from filmmakers all over the world to the big splashy tent poles, Hollywood star-laden Oscar submissions of end-of-the-year films like that. And then the things in the middle, where we get a lot of great discovery, are the distributors that we work with on an annual basis. One of them, Kino Lorber, offered me a slate of films to consider, and this one really stood out of its powerful, gripping, emotional story about a young woman who's been raped. It was accepted in the festival, and things were great until I got an email from them saying, hey, by the way, the director of the film, Shatara Ford, is from St. Louis. Did you know that? I did not. Delighted to understand that and happy to have her today to have a Q&A about the film with a longtime colleague and friend, Kenya Vaughn, a longtime arts and entertainment writer and reporter for the St. Louis American. I'm now going to disappear into the mist and let the two ladies talk about this important film, Test Pattern.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay,
Oh, excellent, excellent. Nice to meet you. I was wondering when I saw your bio, what part of Arkansas is your family? My family is
My
from Arkansas.
my family is from a couple places just outside Little Rock. So my dad is from a town called, and my mom is from a kind of small rural town called Riceville. Um,
Okay.
but metropolitan Little Rock is definitely what they're connected to. I was in Searcy, which is kind of like a little, I think if I get my geography right, it's off of 55 going, it's a little further like northeast of Little Rock. So yeah.
Okay, my grandmother is from Cloud, which is right by Hope in Hempstead County.
Okay.
Hempstead County, so I spent my summers there. So
Yeah. So you have the same kind of life that I did.
yeah,
All my summers were in Arkansas.
yes. So I guess we'll go ahead and about you, the filmmaker. What about at what moment did you know that filmmaking was something that like was a journey or was part of your journey in your past?
That's a really good question. It should have been shorter than it was. So I've always loved movies. I was taken to the movies probably every single weekend in my childhood. Either it was the Esquire or Creveport 12 or West Olive 16. And yes, movies are a part of just how my brain works and what I understand. But I didn't really think that, I'm going to be really honest. It sounds crazy in 2020, I think, but I didn't think that was, I didn't think that, uh, it was something that made sense. My family's first generation middle class. The emphasis for us was always to get a really good job, get a good education. Making movies didn't really fit into that. It was a really precarious thing. I think also I was really intimidated by the process. I didn't really understand how you could make movies, like where that came from. I just saw a whole bunch of like white men pretty much like around really expensive equipment, and I didn't know how that worked. But I got really into, like, I always been into like theater and drama and stuff, and I went to Clayton, and my first kind of taste of being able to work with like storytelling equipment was through my broadcast journalism program. So I kind of went down a path of a very steady career, thinking, okay, journalism is the way that I can tell stories and work with film. But yeah, I don't know. I think somewhere down the line, I was always writing screenplays and still always kind of wanting to make music videos and movies, and finally kind of, I don't know, convinced myself that it was something worth doing when I was in college. So I started taking it seriously in college. And I had a screenwriting professor there say to me that it's probably something that I really should consider and pursue. So I did, and then I got an MFA, and I haven't really looked back. So.
Did you go to college?
I went to Pitzer College, which is one of the Claremont colleges out in Southern California.
Okay. And it's so funny that you brought that up. Like Cinema St. Louis does a great job of making a masterful job of making the industry feel accessible. But for somebody in St. Louis, like they provide resources, opportunities, you know, different things. But there are so many aspiring filmmakers that feel like, can I do it from here in St. Louis? It seems so big and so far away. What would you tell them from your own experiences to give them encouragement, or to give them, you know, words of wisdom, or, you know, as far as the journey of being a filmmaker with roots in St. Louis, or, you know?
Yeah, of course. That it's simpler than you think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what really transformed for me was actually seeing how production, and realizing that to be a filmmaker, you have to have a specific vision and idea for the thing that you want to do. And then it's your job to kind of put together a group of people who execute that vision. And so it's more important, you know, that good idea in your head, and be able to communicate it to others than it is anything else. So, and then just try it.
Well,
Keep trying.
you,
And then,
yeah, keep trying.
you know, whether it's, you know, making something with the, you know, 20 bucks that you get on the phone and your friends, and then keep scaling and scaling and scaling, and watch a lot of movies and learn about how they were made.
Well, Test Pattern is your debut feature film. What about this story? Because I'm sure as a filmmaker, as a creative, you have tons of stories rumbling inside your head. What about this story made it the one that you wanted to kick off your career with? And what was your intention with Test Pattern?
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I don't think that there was really the one, like I don't think I wrote this and thought, okay, this is the one that I'm going to start my career with. I think there's a confluence of a lot of things. Going is really expensive, and I tried to make a movie beforehand. The very tray of, you know, I wrote a script, I went around town trying to get people to finance it. There's a narrative always that, you know, Hollywood is going to not really take risks with people who've never made features before. But then there's that chicken and egg situation where it's like, well, you know, if I don't ever get money, how am I ever going to make a feature? So I knew at a certain point that I was going to have to make a movie that was cheap enough that I could probably do it myself, but was big enough in scope that my crew were going to get paid, and that, you know, I was going to give myself the right amount of days to properly make the thing, and do it and execute the film at, you know, high quality, production quality and high standard, which kind of leaves you below $1 million, like $500,000, but kind of above $100,000, what equipment you already have access to. This film is financed through a ton of credit cards and a loan. So, you know, I loans, student loans to go to college. My credit is great. And in 2017, I tanked it with a whole bunch of credit cards and loans. And I also asked quite a few friends who already worked in television and were making good money to help me by, you know, giving me $1,000 here and there. And that's how I cobbled together the money to like make the film properly. Everyone will tell you not to do it that way. I disagree. I think that it's worth doing if you know exactly the risks that you're going to have involved, which is that, you know, you're going to be eating ramen and beans for a while and paying a lot of debt. But it is worth it if you believe in the thing and you know that this is what you kind of need to do to get there. I also call it like the Spike Lee and Coen brothers way of making their first movie, because that's exactly what they did. I mean, I think the Coen brothers went, you know, into their synagogue and asked for investments from people in their community, and Spike Lee asked friends who were already a little more successful than him making money to invest in his film. And that's kind of what I did as well, on top of a whole bunch of debt. The reason why it was test pattern is, honestly, it was time. It's timing. I was in the middle of, I had raised about $100 to shoot a proof of concept for another film that I was wanting to make. And so this was going to be like an 8-minute short with a lot of like technical stuff, which is why the budget was so high. And I'd been swirling around in my head for the last few months before then, just thinking a lot about consent, which was a topic that was coming up a lot. And I was thinking a lot about rape. I remember, you know, in like late 2016, I watched, you know, Samantha Bee, and there was a segment on, you know, the backlog, the rape kit backlog, which I was astonished by and didn't really know much about at the time. And then I kind of poured into kind of reading more and more and more about rape kits and how that even happens. Then I started realizing that rape kits weren't that accessible to begin with. So many places that you'll go into will charge, which is not allowed, and is a deterrent. A lot of places don't even really know what a rape kit or forensic when it comes to assault, so they don't offer it. And then there are a lot of states where you have to have an actual forensic nurse conduct the examination, and not all hospitals have those. So I was just kind of overwhelmed by the obstacles already to get something that is already very hard to get. And then on top of that, I was thinking a lot about, you know, all the stories I was reading all over the country. There's, you know, women mainly from different walks of life that are experiencing this. And I found it really interesting just thinking for a Black woman, especially just the concept of having to engage with police, engage with institutions that we don't always trust, we don't always should trust, and what that looks like for a person like that. I thought about myself. I thought about actually being in Missouri, which is to both of those things, reproductive rights and being Black, you know. And so if this were me in Missouri, would I feel comfortable going to the police? Probably not, seeing as my, you know, 20 years in St. Louis, I'd had my fair share of ability from institutions that should protect me that didn't. So no, I probably wouldn't have felt good about that. And knowing how assault is dealt with, knowing reproductive justice is dealt with in St. Louis, in Missouri, I don't know if I'd feel good being able to navigate that process. So that sounds like a nightmare scenario. So honestly, I was wanting to make a horror film for something that I think Black women in particular experience on the daily in states that are incredibly hostile to our existence. So I kind of wrote that, and I gave it to my producer who was working on this other proof of concept with me, and she was like, oh no, we should do this right now, like right now. So we dropped everything and realized that, you know, if I took out some loans and got some credit cards, we could probably get this thing done as soon as possible. So that's what we did.
Well, it reminds me of like how you like, I don't know if you Netflix, They've Gotta Have Us. It was a series about, and Robert, it was the exact same way. So it was like, so I'm compelled, like, why did you start with the scene that you started with in the film? Like, and then
That's a good question. I did the film a couple of years ago, so now I'm trying to remember why we made that decision. Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. I haven't thought about that in a while. I think there's a couple of things. You know, I originally wanted us to get a sense of like um, Renisha's own problem, also disjointedness with experience. So I think since I was going to be doing the structure, you know, we kind of start in the present and then go back to the past.
Right.
I kind of wanted to create a bookend with that. So if there's a way to kind of start us in the more present moment, why not start it in a place where up to kind of effectively Renisha doesn't really remember. So that we all know this is the first information you get. And,
Yes.
and so it's burned into your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back. And I think that's really helpful because it's first having a conversation with the audience about what we know to be true, what we know is happening before we jump into anybody's perspective, before we get any information. This is what we see. So yeah, I think that's the idea behind that.
And in this film, like you take us to with Renisha through a sweet spot in her life. Like she's figured out, like she's in this place, in this great relationship, in this place of self-discovery, in this place of finding well-meaning career, and this turns everything upside down. Like, and she's living this life. What was it like as a storyteller, knowing that you had to unravel her?
As a Black woman, I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but life sucks all the time, you know. And but like it's mixed within really sweet, wonderful moments. And so what I was trying to do, what I was trying to really pull the audience in on is like this kind of roller coaster experience of having really, really lovely things get disrupted for things that are completely out of your control. And I don't mean like a natural disaster. I mean like the systems that should be working for us on a daily basis and how that puts pressure on the most like, you know, basic modalities of life.
Well, and also like Renisha in this, she's one of those responsible, like one of those, like the person, you know, like the last, like you make assumptions about people, about who deserves to be a victim, right? And it's like this turns that on its head, but it also shed the film shed on her being nudged out of her comfort zone, her being nudged, like her instincts are telling her one thing, and it's like her being, you know, like kindly coerced into letting her guard down. Like, why was that so important for you to illustrate on film in this pattern?
Yeah, well, consent is really, really nebulous. I think that also the like a spectrum, and kind of what I would sit and do with my editors, think about that spectrum. Like, you know, when is it just like a, you know, 1 point violation of boundaries to kind of coercion to force. And I do think that, you know, when we experience assault, we are kind of always being pushed along a scale. And sometimes that scale only stops at 4, sometimes it stops at 7, sometimes it goes all the way to 10. And so I kind of wanted to illuminate how that happens, you know? And I think human motivation is never just one thing. And I think for Renisha, there was a lot going on with her. She wanted to look after her friend. She also knows she's a little uptight and she wanted to kind of try to go with the flow, if that makes sense. She has to deal with the fact that she wants to be nice, even though being nice in her mind is also violating her own boundaries and her own comfort level. And how women a lot of times get put into positions like that, and how that's culturally unfair and structurally unfair. What I was trying to express there.
Mission accomplished. It was just like, you think about it and it's like, yeah, like everything in her body and in her instinct, in her intuition is telling her an episode of Oprah, and it was like human beings, women in particular, are the only species that go against their instinct for the greater good of everybody everybody else as opposed to self-preservation. So, yeah. And we talked about this a bit before, but it was like a lot of what happened in the film is about, systemic violation of Renisha and others in the process of reporting the crime, the lack of structure and assessing it. So that was a great way of shedding light, because a lot of the stories, like in these Law and Order SVU true crime treatments, we don't see that side up. We see, the other side, and this is we don't see the other systemic victimization.
Yeah, I think so much of this is cultural. I don't have the stats to hand because they change a lot, and I don't know. There's always like the idea of like statistics being made up, but there's a really, I think there's a really compelling observation that's been made, and there are stats that prove that, there are quite a few rapes that never get reported, and that's because of what's happening internally with the person. I think that there's a point where is that this is rape, and that culturally is really difficult in itself. It's been interesting listening to audiences who watch this film and decide that Renisha wasn't raped. And I don't really know how that happens, but I mean, I do. It's still shocking when I hear it. People are like, well, she's dancing with him. She did go home with him. And I'm like, but I need space for an ideal like that to exist. I think that victim blaming is a thing. And I think that victims themselves go through the process of blaming themselves because, again, culturally, we've been taught that if you're a woman, you have to be, thinking for yourself and for everybody else. And if human and you make a mistake, then it's your fault, and that's something that you did. And I think that this larger problem of how we talk about consent and how we talk about assault and how we deal with rape. That I hear from audiences sometimes about how, Renisha's situation isn't really resolved. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
and I think that's my pushback against something like SVU. I think there are way more situations like this that just don't get resolved. And I don't even know, I think the concept of like resolution and closure is also personal. Like, I don't know what Renisha's concept of resolution is. I have a guess. I know what mine is. And it doesn't necessarily end with the police finding that guy, what's going on for her there. So,
well, we talked about like how asks for justice in this. It's like he's so supportive, even at his quest for justice, even at points, comes at the expense of Risha's comfort. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to believe that his frustrations were, his girlfriend getting the justice. Part of me felt like it was because he wasn't getting the extent he was used to being. Exactly. Yeah. So bingo. I just wanted you to expound on that a bit.
Yeah, it's just, again, the recognition that in people with different levels of privilege who can be our greatest at times, if they're not careful, if they're not aware, bulldoze you and push you to the side in the name of what they think is right for you. And the truth is, like, Evan's done some messed up things, as a man and as a white person. As, a man, and it's not race to decide that what is justice for Renisha. Renisha actually says what she wants. In fact, when she does, he ignores it. And I really wanted to exemplify that with just the whole kind of pea cup fiasco, like the fact that he gets upset and Renisha says she has to pee and he immediately snaps at her, hold it. And here she is, you know, minutes, hours later, still holding this pee because he has a very specific thing that he needs done. That's in the name of her, but he isn't actually considering her. And I think that we see this a lot with, like, you know, white folks as well who want to do the right thing. And I think this is particularly pertinent right now in the current iteration of the movement for Black Lives. Like, I live in Philly right now, and a big conversation that's happening as we are, you know, marching in protest for another, you know, death, or, you know, an unwarranted death of a Black man by a cop, is white folks wanting to go out in the streets too, and not necessarily thinking about how their bodies or their behavior can agitate or instigate more pain for the communities that they're trying to support. So that's something that I'm also trying to have a conversation about in the film.
Yeah, no, it was great. What do you hope that a survivor of this assault would say after seeing test pattern?
That they feel embodied. And I think that there are a lot of sexual assault stories, a lot of rape stories, and I think that those stories aren't valid, but they always veer towards extreme in resolution, as in it's all kind of wrapped up and solved and taken to justice, or the extreme in how it happens. And again, those things do happen, but assault is much more common than I think that we would like to believe, and that our culture engages with. And I think that what Renisha is experiencing is something that a lot of people have experienced in one way, shape, or form. And so it's really great when I have audiences come up to me and say, as a man, I understand, like, this has happened to me, you know, I was Evan, or I was one of those guys, and I never really thought about it before in that way, or saw it in that way, and God, I gotta go home and sit with myself. And it's also really great for me to hear people who have not experienced assault say, I've never this experience before, and now I get it, and now I understand. So those are really great too. But I also do get the folks who have experienced assault, you know, thank you for doing this, because this is exactly what I felt. I never had language for this experience before until now. So, and that's all I just wanted to provide language. It was helpful for me, so I was hopeful that it'd be helpful for others.
Well, and it also shares, like, puts the spotlight on not only does the culture need to change, but the system needs to change. And I thought that was a wonderful, like, you know, caveat as far as what the story is, you know.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that you feel like we didn't? I feel like we talked about
we did. Just in general, I think that, you know, America, and I just need everybody to remember that. And I think ultimately, what I hope this movie illuminates is all the ways in which that happens, whether it's in our interpersonal relations, in our institutions, in our systems of justice, in our healthcare system. You know, we are constantly being failed, and I'm kind of tired of it. So, yeah.
Well, I thank you for being just being a part of telling that story, because it's like, even like for you to have the courage to tell that story for your first film out. So it's just, I'm looking forward to people seeing it. And like I said, I was just so thrilled by the idea of showing because we show, you know, one side of the victimization, but then, you know, the systemic failures that are imposed, like, that we've come to expect. Like, he doesn't expect justice from the system.
Right. He really doesn't.
So, Well, I thank you so much, Shatara. It was such a great chat, and I really enjoyed it. So, and thanks, Chris, for having me.
Yeah, I said I wasn't going to come back, but that was a lie because I was just so moved by the film and the discussion. So, Kenya, I honor and thank you for your service in watching this, and I knew you were the right person to do this conversation. Shatara, so great to meet you, and we're so glad that you told this important, vital story. And I'm glad I picked it before I even knew that you were here. So there was no, that wasn't influenced me in any way, but we're grateful to know it. And now you're an alum of the St. Louis International Film Festival forever. So please keep in touch with future projects and work going forward. And we're happy to meet you. So thank you both, ladies, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Oh, thanks for picking me. I hope I was okay. I'm always nervous with these kind of things.
Kenya, you were fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
bye-bye.
bye.
Thank you.